practice?
Try.
Wonderful. I know some people have learned transcendental meditation. There are many, many, many different forms, but whatever works for you, that's what you should follow right now. So again, we come together in consciousness, and we recognize the one power that is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. And as my teacher, Dr. Manella, used to add, God is also omni-active and omni-loving. So as we meditate on that thought of God being present right here, right now, then let us feel that presence. It doesn't have to be complicated. But our hearts connect to the heart of God. And the blessings in our lives are God's expression of His love for us. So then we open our hearts to whatever God has intended or planned for us today. What new wonderful thing, or an old, well-known wonderful thing shall be our experience today. We listen for God's voice, for that guidance, that love. Let us see God's love pouring out upon all of humanity, including those engaged in conflict halfway around the world. They too are loved. And so let love and light and understanding dawn upon us all. That we may do our part. Each one of us, part and parcel of that universal consciousness we call God. We have a name for it, doesn't mean we totally understand it. But we trust in that God who is love, as Scripture tells us. And we give thanks for this time of meditation. Amen. How would you like to be a terrorist? Or maybe a local gangster? I mean, why not? You could do whatever you set your mind to do, right? You could be. We've all been seeing, some of the awful news reports about Israel and the Palestinians. And pretty much everybody's appalled. But some people are surprised, and that surprises me. Because I think about history, even going way back to the Roman Empire, even though there was this time when historians say, well, there was this Pax Romana, Roman peace, that lasted for about 1,000 years. Nevertheless, it wasn't really the kind of peace that we think of. The Romans were pretty cool in one sense. When they conquered a country, like Israel, they would allow those folks to keep their religion, to keep their traditions, etc. Of course, they couldn't have an army, they couldn't rebel against Rome. And of course, they had to do the same thing we get to do today, pay taxes. If you paid your taxes to Rome and you didn't rebel, then it was pretty peaceful. And so countries that had been neighbors and fighting with each other maybe for centuries, if they both became part of the Roman Empire, that was the end of their fighting. It was pretty amazing when you think about it. But the Romans weren't really all that nice. If you were a criminal or suspected of a crime, you might get flogged. Maybe you were part of a rebel group that wanted to, get free of the Romans. And if you weren't forthcoming with information about your buddies in the rebel group, you could get flogged. Even if you were suspected of having committed a crime, you might get flogged. Anybody know what that is? I read that for years. I didn't know what it is. Finally, I looked it up in Wikipedia. It means being whipped, exactly. And the Romans had a special kind of whip. They would tie little balls of lead and stuff on the end of the fibers or leather strings, whatever they were. So when you got flogged, you were not a happy camper. And there was plenty of wounding, bruising, and bleeding. And that's not the kind of peace that we really want today. And I think a lot of people were kind of shocked. We've had the UN, and World War II was a long time ago, and it seems like, boy, maybe we're going into a new age where there's peace among the nations, and then this horrible conflict happens. So if you know a little bit about history, it's no surprise. And as long as we're still rubbing shoulders with folks who don't have the teaching we have about the oneness, about peace and love. And the ironic thing is the Palestinians and the Israelis, they're the same race, Semites. They both descended from Abraham. All these Arabic nations in Israel, they're all brothers and sisters of the same race. Amazing. My title is that God is personal to all who feel, and it's based on a quote from Ernest Holmes, who said, God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. Do you feel this indwelling presence? Because think about this. Suppose you pass from this life, then you get incarnated in a totally different place. Will you remember who you are? They say you can't take it with you, right? But that's referring to material things. No matter how much wealth you accumulate in this life, it ain't going anywhere with you. Your heirs get to enjoy it. But who we really are, that we do take with us. What kind of person are you? How well established are you in your spiritual ideal, in your knowledge of who you are? If you were born, just hypothetically, reborn into country X, and you were taught in school and by your family and by your relatives and the whole culture that those guys over there in country A, they're oppressing us, they're evil, we're going to get our land back from them, no matter how many of them we have to kill, to resist that? You're in a new lifetime. You don't remember the particulars and the details of this life. But will you remember who you really are? Will you be strong enough to resist that indoctrination of hate? And it's on both sides in this current conflict. One of the things that Charles Fillmore writes about is the law of mind action. And so this personal aspect of God kind of manifests in two ways. There's this law of mind action, where we can use our minds to heal. We can use our minds in prayer to help others. It's amazing, it's really amazing. And so God is law, but God is also love. On page 33 of Christian Healing, Charles Fillmore wrote, "Every idea projects form. The physical body is the projection of man's idea. We carry the body in the mind. The body is the fruit of the tree of life which grows in the midst of the garden of mind. If the body idea is grounded and rooted in divine mind, capital D, capital M, if it's rooted in divine mind, the body will be filled with a perpetual life flow that will repair all its imperfect parts and heal all its diseases." Now that is very appealing. And I think a lot of people get into unity or new thought communities precisely because the old line teachings will say, well, yeah, you can pray, but you might not get healed. And a lot of their teaching is that, yes, God is good and you can have good after you die. In the here and now, life is going to be crummy. You have trials and tribulations. It'll be a real bother. But when you die, then you'll be happy. What a sales pitch. You never have to prove the product, right? Because person dies and they don't come back to tell you about it. You never have to prove that it's true, but you can keep selling it. I'm just saying. I mean, I believe in the Bible. I do. I've read it from cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation, the whole thing. And I believe in it. But how I understand it may be a little different from how other people understand it. And certainly we have a much richer and more wonderful perspective here than other spiritual communities. So that appeal of power, of being able to craft our life the way we want it, to have health when we want it, ooh, that is a great and wonderful thing. And it's in the here and now. We're not saying, oh, after you die, everything will be fine. No, right now. And I was thinking a little bit about this when you consider the history of New Thought, how unity and divine science and other movements arose in the second half of the 19th century. And, we, our forebears, got the idea that we can create health and we can create sickness with our negativity. We can use, instead of affirmative prayer, we can have negative prayer. And it wasn't until the first half of the 20th century that medical science discovered psychosomatic medicine, how the body can make you ill or well, depending on your emotions, your thoughts. So we were way ahead of the medical fraternity. But there's that other aspect that think this group emphasizes very much, and rightly so, the love aspect. And I found a wonderful quote, again from Christian Healing on page 130. Fillmore writes, "Love in divine mind is the idea of universal unity. In expression, love is the power that joins and binds in divine harmony the universe and everything in it." So love is really about unity or oneness. We are one with our brothers and sisters across the ocean who are fighting and killing each other. We are one with them as much as we are one with God, and they are one with us. But knowing that and becoming aware of it, that's a whole different step, see? Are you practicing your spiritual practices? Are you training yourself so that what you really are in your heart of hearts, when you come back in your next lifetime, it'll be there and you'll be a happy camper? We need to be well established in this lifetime. So I thought I'd share a few personal experiences of what I understand to be God's love. And, well, I'll just tell it. You can react the way you want. After college, I got a job working as a computer programmer at Hughes Aircraft Company. Interestingly enough, I got that through an engineer who was in my little prayer meditation group, and he got me into Hughes to get an interview. So that was great. And they liked what I said, so I worked there for 3 or 4 years. One day, while I was walking down one of the corridors toward my little office, my little cubicle, something like a valve seemed to open up in my chest. And the fluid, I could feel it kind of flowed out and spread out in my chest and then went, I guess, throughout the rest of my body, I don't know. When that happened, I felt I was completely loved. I was safe, I was secure, I had nothing to worry about. I knew I was loved. And it kind of surprised me because, here I was in the middle of my work day, just walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden, boom, this experience comes to me. It really changed my life. It really changed my perspective. Up to that point, I had been studying metaphysical stuff. My initial training in metaphysics and New Thought was through the Edgar Cayce material, which some of you know about. Well, I learned a lot through that. Through my teen years, I read Edgar Cayce on this, Edgar Cayce on that. I probably read 24 books about that and learned a different perspective. I learned about reincarnation, which I accepted right away. I said, oh, this is a great theory. I was so worried about God. There's so many injustices in life. I have to defend God. But it explained reincarnation and karma, which is really just cause and effect. It's carried over from one lifetime to another. It explained so much to me. It was really a great comfort to me. I had no knowledge of my personal past lives at that time. That would come later, as you'll find out if you read in my dream book. I share a couple of past life recalls that happened in the dream state. Quite wonderful. But even earlier than that experience in high school, I had a little different kind of experience. I caught some kind of bug, and my temperature shot up to 104.6. Let me tell you, when your brain gets that hot, weird things start to happen. My consciousness was kind of fading in and out, and I didn't know where I was. At times I would be where, I'm lying on my bed at home, resting. Other times I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. My mom kind of freaked out, and she was able to get me into general practitioner, our family doctor, right away. And he examined me and he said, well, young Kenny has some kind of unknown virus, and I've had 2 other cases of this in the last 3 years, and they were both fatal. And my mother was like, oh no, my Kenny! She really, did not want to lose her middle child, as you can imagine. So then they sent me to the emergency room. They did a spinal tap, which was also an interesting sensation, and gave me an anti-nausea shot and sent me back home to see what would happen. Eventually in the night, my temperature did drop. In the morning, I woke up and I felt so peaceful. I mean, totally at peace. I used to argue with my little sister every day. Did not argue with her one bit. Everything was harmonious. I felt like I was walking with a kind of a soft white cloud surrounding me wherever I would go. And again, I was completely safe. I was completely secure. And I guess the disease may have been like a cleansing. It may have burned something out of me. Those of you who have studied yoga, you may know about the chakras. And this kind of thing can happen when a center opens up and brings you an experience. But it was wonderful, and it only lasted a day. But boy, I was just walking around smiling at everybody. Felt so peaceful. It was wonderful. So these experiences to me were really evidence of God's love for me. And I think everybody's experience is a little different. I love watching those near-death experience videos, which I think I mentioned before. Each person's testimony is a little different. Some see things that others don't. Some, meet Jesus and others don't. So I think, God is smart enough to tailor an experience for each one of us individually. What are we prepared to accept? What kind of preconceptions about reality do we have already? And so God knows all about that, of course, and brings us the experience that we need that won't, knock us too far for a loop. Give us something new, of course, but something that's somewhat in alignment with what you already know, and then show you a little more so that you are prepared for your next step in your wonderful spiritual unfoldment. Looks like we're running a little low on time, so I'm gonna. No, we're good? Oh, in that case, I can talk for hours. My first teacher in New Thought, Reverend Dr. Wanella Evans, was in the movement for a long time, for decades, before something happened where she had what she called her Jesus experience. And she said she had kind of prayed about it and thought about it, and she wondered, if it would ever come, if it would ever happen. She wasn't, stressed out about it. She was doing her thing day by day. But then one day, Jesus appeared on her shoulder. And she said his head was just resting on her shoulder and going with her wherever she went. And this lasted for 2 weeks. And again, she felt so loved and cared for and reassured that God and Jesus loved her. At the time, she had adopted a young boy named Tony, and he was kind of wild and crazy. He'd been in foster homes, was abandoned by his parents, kind of knocked around a couple of foster homes, and then was in, what do they call those facilities where it's Child Protective Services puts you, it's an LA County thing, not an orphan home, that's kind of the old school name for it, but he lived in one of those facilities for about a year. And so finally she was able to adopt him. He was just a wonderful little boy. But he was, I guess thanks to his early experiences, he was a little wild and crazy, a little erratic, unpredictable. One day he ran off down the block. He was going to run away from home, right? And he's at that age, he was a lot faster than she was. So she stood on the porch and just prayed to God. And eventually he came back in about 20 minutes. But I think because of her service to this young boy who had been abused and had some horrible experiences, her love for him was a great service to his soul. How wonderful it was for him to come into contact with someone who really loved him, a parent figure who really loved him. In my book, I share a couple of encounters that I had with Jesus in the dream state. And they were pretty awesome. And the one thing that happens each time I feel his presence is I just tear up. I start crying tears of joy because his love is not just unconditional. We like to use that term, right? Oh, so-and-so has unconditional love for whatever. His love is perfect. There wasn't a wrinkle of condemnation or judgment towards me, and I certainly felt unworthy of that great love. I was like, perfect love. And again, it really changed my life. I kind of became a Jesus person, although not so verbally. You know, I don't like to foist myself upon other people. But there's no doubt in my mind that he's the leader. Edgar Casey said Jesus was appointed to be governor of this planet. What a governor. Wow, what he went through in order to save humanity. And let's face it, we need rescuing. Look at all the negativity. We need saving. So I have no problem with saying this humanity needs to be saved, absolutely. So I can't affirm or deny any of the theological issues, like, is he the second person of the Trinity? You know, is he the Messiah, the fulfillment of Jewish prophecy, or whatever theological thing you might want to ask. I really respect Buddha so much because he refused to answer certain questions that he was asked. He felt they were irrelevant. You need to know what you need to know to live your life to the highest and best that you can today. And whatever happens in the future or after death, that'll take care of itself. You take care of your consciousness today, now, and then the future will be just fine. so I can't answer a lot of those theological questions. But I can say I recommend you follow Jesus. He's the best. He knows what he's doing. He lived a human life. He knows what it's like. He went to funerals. He went to weddings. He went out to lunch. He hung out with people. He suffered. He cried with people. And he rejoiced in God, whom he called lovingly his Father. So God is personal to all who feel his indwelling presence. And I say to you, just keep on working on your spiritual practices. Do what you do day by day. And don't give up hope, even though there's really ugly stuff happening around the world. We don't have to be a part of it. And indeed, as we pray for our brothers and sisters who are misguided, who, as I said, don't have the teaching that you have, it will get better. There will be a healing. Some people are saying these horrible things that are happening. These are the birth pangs of a new age that is coming, when there will be greater unity of all people in the world. Let's do our part. Amen.